A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello and welcome back. It is another episode of A Side B Side podcast. What's up, Adam?
Not too much, Brooke. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I still have yet to watch any new movies because I've been obsessed with Peaky Blinders still.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got what, 4 or 5 seasons to get through before you can look at anything else. So
Five seasons, but they're short. There's only 6 episodes in each season. So I'm almost to season 4, which seems really fast, but 6 episodes a season. So
yeah, it goes quick. And they're like an hour long.
Yeah, they're an hour long a piece. Okay. And it's amazing because a lot of British stars, of course, because it's a British drama, but there's a lot of British stars that kind of pop up in and out. Like Tom Hardy makes an appearance. I'm trying to remember
is Cillian Murphy
he's the lead in that? Sam Neill. Sam Neill had a major role in it. I mean, it's pretty impressive the people that they get, But again, it's
I've
Netflix.
Heard good stuff.
It is very good. Like I avoided watching it for several seasons. Again, the whole like Ted Lasso thing. I don't want to watch it. It's not going to be good. And then
everyone's told me how good it is. So no, it's not gonna live up to it.
Right. And then I was like, oh my, how mistaken I was, because this is great.
Oh, it's a sign of maturity that you can admit that, though.
Why, thank you.
I'm not sure I can. So
if you're a Sons of Anarchy fan, Tommy Flanagan pops up. You'd recognize him from Sons of Anarchy. So again, there's like a bunch of, if you watch British anything, really, you'll recognize a lot of these people.
Does Josh Hartnett show up in it?
I haven't seen him yet.
I don't know why in my brain I had him connected with Peaky Blinders in some way.
No, I don't believe so, unless he's in like the last. Could be. It's very possible. I'm not going to say he's not. He has not popped up yet.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why I had that in my head.
But you know who does pop up? Sam Claflin, who you would probably recognize from movies like The Hunger Games, Me Before You, Adrift, Snow White, and The Huntsman. And then also someone that I think you are a big fan of, Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah. Why did I think he was? I don't know. Adrian Brody.
I was just going to say Adrian Brody's in it. Yep.
The list of shows that I need to watch is so long, but I will end up just adding this to the list as well.
Sure. Are you turning this into a Josh Hartnett podcast instead of an Angelina Jolie podcast
No,
now?
I don't know why I thought he was in it. That my brain just decides weird stuff sometimes. I don't know. I was like, why? Like, there's a picture of him in like a bowler hat that it must have been from something else completely that I just put in, that I just assumed was Peaky Blinders.
You just said bowler hat, Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I guess I just like assumed the two were connected in some way. Okay. There's so much to watch. It's awesome, but also like it's kind of exhausting.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit overwhelming.
And it feels like every week there's something new, and like, yikes, it's a lot to catch up on. And I mean, I still haven't watched the most recent episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which just came out today. So I guess it's not that weird. It was just over today. I haven't slept in like a long time, so everything's running together.
Okay.
But yeah, it's intimidating. There's a lot to watch. I watched a lot of old movies this week and some new stuff. The only new stuff I watched was another episode of NCIS, and I'm still working on how I want to talk about the story arc there. But I think there's a lot to talk about because I'm very, very conflicted. And after watching all of the episodes, it's a whole different angle, and it's unexpected. Like, especially this episode this week with Wilder Valderrama dealing with, abandonment issues, basically. And it all of a sudden, NCIS is tackling like pretty heavy stuff in a different way than it ever has before. So, yeah, I really am going to do a segment on that one of these days once I wrap my brain around it. But it just each week it just kind of throws me for a loop again. I did rewatch a movie that absolutely holds up all the way back from 1984. We mentioned last week we were talking about Runaway, the Tom Selleck sci-fi film that was a bomb, and another movie that came out that year that was a sci-fi hit was The Terminator. And I realized that I had not seen the original Terminator all the way through unedited in ages. So I rewatched that this weekend. Man, does that movie hold up. It, the special effects have their moments where you're like, okay, this is obviously fake, but they were actually really solid. And it is in a movie that seems so out of time with really the heroine of the heroine of the movie, it being Linda Hamilton. It kind of shocked me how good it was and held up. So that was a nice little surprise.
Well, that's cool. I know Euphoria is back. So I need to catch up on another episode of Euphoria. And if you like, all I think of when I watch this show is, where do they go to high school? My high school wasn't like this. And I ask my kids, was your high school like this? And they're like, my high school was. I'm like, whose high school is this?
Yeah. Well, but I mean, like any high school in media, right? Like nothing was like, South, like where Buffy went in Buffy, that, like that wasn't like real high school. Beverly Hills 90210.
Well, I don't expect them to be like fighting vampires in an ordinary high school that only happens over the Hellmouth. But what I'm telling you is
touche. But I mean, like 90210 or the OC. Heck, even,
I know, but this is like even way more. This is like so much more extreme. It's so much more intense because it's just so like I wouldn't even say college was like I don't know. It's just so very intense. It's a good show. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm hooked on it, but I'm just like, I don't know where this happens to this degree.
Do you think it's just over time we have to get like the intensity level has to keep getting turned up and up and up, because like we had shows like 90210 30 years ago. So now we've got to do something that's more, more shock value or more intense or more dramatic.
Probably.
And it's, you just keep pushing the envelope. I mean, as dramatic and life-changing as Jesse Spano taking caffeine pills was for me at the time, you can't really get away with taking caffeine pills at this point and being shocking people.
What did she sing again? When she was like,
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Yeah, and she's crying. I'm so excited.
And then she's crying at the end.
And like everybody was like, oh my gosh, did you see that episode of Saved by the Bell? Yeah. And now we laugh at it because
it was. But I mean, the funny thing is, they couldn't, like, they originally wrote it, she was going to be on speed, but they were like, oh, that's too much, so she's on caffeine pills.
and on like Euphoria, they're literally like doing cocaine on the screen while having sex in a bathroom or something. I'm giving an exaggeration, but not too far off.
I was like, that could actually be a complete scene out of the movie, and no one would, or TV show, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
It's just the level of, in the shock value, like the threshold is so much different than it was.
Yeah.
Well, look at us talking like we're old people.
Back in my day, kids, let me tell you.
Fictional kids these days getting away with everything.
And the TV had rabbit ears and you had to move them to get a good picture, kids.
Do you know what happened when your grandfather wanted to change the channel? You know what he got? I was the remote. I had to go up there and turn the knob. We had 4 channels and one of them was just a U. We didn't know what that was.
Back in my day, kids, The Simpsons was on the Tracy Ullman show. Do you remember that? Like a lot of people forget that.
I do. Yeah. Well, it was the that was the only thing that succeeded on the Tracy Ullman show. So
I know. And it was horribly drawn at that time. It was like so like it was so raw.
The first season is really bad too. If you go back and watch it, the animation has come a long way. But yeah, it was pretty bare budget at the beginning. But hey, they stuck around forever. They're still going.
I'd love to pull that back
will probably
out.
be on TV when I'm dead.
And Bart's still going to be eating my shorts, which was very controversial back in the day. And now it's like,
it was.
What? Yeah.
Because I was not allowed to watch Simpsons as a kid.
No, my mom hated the Simpsons. She did not like the Simpsons. Which is
and now it's like, oh, this is the historical program of record that predicts the future.
Yeah, seriously.
Did you see the Brady? They predicted the Brady brand as well.
No, gosh.
Yeah, they had Brady in a blue t-shirt or a blue hoodie with like the block Brady letter on his chest, just like the first like hoodie that you could buy from the Brady brand.
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe the Brady brand did that on purpose, but
that's funny.
Yeah, it seems like everything has been predicted by The Simpsons, but it's also, you have that many episodes, you're gonna predict some stuff on accident.
Yeah. Real quick before we jump into the episode, did you see the Spotify Neil Young argument over Joe Rogan?
I did. I understand what he's doing. I don't know how effective it's gonna be.
Well, Spotify they've pulled his catalog.
Yeah, the artists have the right to do that. We hear it during political campaigns all the time. Somebody will use a song in a rally, and then the artist will be like, "Hey, you can't use that anymore." Real quick, just in case you hadn't heard. So Neil Young, not a fan of Joe Rogan, and he gave Spotify an ultimatum and said, either pull Joe Rogan or you pull me, and Spotify pulled Neil Young. So this is going to be interesting to see how it goes. Well, and the sad part is it's probably, when you look at, and I don't have the numbers and I'm making an assumption here, but I'm guessing more people are streaming Joe Rogan's podcast than are listening to Neil Young.
True. Yeah, you're right.
For a business decision, that's probably where Spotify went with it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, this is episode number 79. No, 78, 79, 80. What are we on?
79. We're on an odd number because I went first last week, so I'm going second this week.
Okay.
So it's either 77 or 79.
It's 79. It's 79. I know. I'm keeping track. I was putting you on the spot, my friend.
Oh, I only know if it's odd or even. That's pretty much where I'm at.
It's episode 79.
79.
Yeah, which of course, like you said, you went first last week, so I go first this week. This week for the B-side, we are going to be talking about John George Haigh. He is known as the acid bath murderer, also known as a vampire. We'll also discuss that and why he got that label as well. So John Haigh was born July 24th, 1909 in Stamford, Lincolnshire. He was raised in a village of Outwood. His parents were John Robert Haigh and Emily Hudson Haigh. And Haigh is Haigh. But I wanted to make sure that I spelled that. I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. So I did look it up at the pronunciation.
Yeah, because I was thinking like hay, like horses.
No. So John Robert, John's father, was an engineer. And the couple themselves, his parents were actually members of the Plymouth Brethren, which is a conservative sect of Protestants. So the family moved to Wakefield when John was still pretty young, and his parents were like really strict. Later in life, he'd actually recall suffering from recurring religious nightmares during his childhood. When he was younger, John became extremely proficient at the piano. He learned at home, taught himself mostly, had a teacher, but, became really proficient. And he was very fond of classical music, and he liked to attend concerts. So far, it doesn't sound like it sounds pretty normal. It sounds like, kind of a normal dude.
Yeah, it's English man of town.
Mm-hmm. John along with being a very proficient piano player, was also a really talented singer. So much so, in fact, that he won a scholarship to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in Wakefield, then to Wakefield Cathedral, where he became a choir boy. Years later, another student at Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, Stephen Griffiths, would be convicted of killing 3 women in Bradford. Maybe we need to look into this school. I'm just kidding. So John Haigh was described at school as a brainy lad, but a bit of a loner. It's widely been reported that as an ambition as a child, he wanted to be a vampire. Look, I get the vampire obsession because, like, was obsessed as a kid, was obsessed, still obsessed. I love vampire stuff. I don't know that I had ambitions of becoming a vampire. I don't think I was ever like, when I get up and grow up and become an adult, I'm gonna be a vampire.
I mean, but kids have crazy dreams, like, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to be a ninja, or I wanted to be a 1940s private eye wearing a trench coat and a fedora and, sitting in a, office and on a stove.
Chasing all those 1940s gangsters of the day.
Yeah. And then a femme fatale would walk in. It was a dark, stormy night when she walked into my life. Little I know that the storm in her eyes would be my undoing.
Oh, okay. So you are supporting his ambitions of vampires.
Sometimes when you're a little kid, you want to be crazy. You want to be cool stuff.
Okay. All right. So after school, John became an apprentice to a firm of motor engineers. He leaves the firm after about a year and a half, and he takes a job in insurance and advertising. So when he was 21, he was fired because he was suspected of stealing from the cash box. So on July 6th of 1934, John Haigh marries Beatrice Betty Hamer. The couple barely knew each other, but John's extremely charming, like some of those British dudes are.
It happens.
We as American chicks love a British accent. She probably was like, hey, your accent's from a different area than mine. You're kind of charming. Maybe it was the same. I don't know.
Mysterious.
So 4 months after they get married, John's put in jail for fraud. Betty gets pregnant and gives birth to their daughter while John is in prison. She ends up putting the baby up for adoption, and then she leaves John while he's still incarcerated.
Uh-oh.
So John's extremely conservative family ends up ostracizing him from then on. I mean, you've been in prison, you've got this wife, but you're now divorced. You've got this baby that's put up for adoption. I'm sure they saw all kinds of red flags for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of societal shame.
Yeah. So upon his release 2 years later in 1936, John moves to London and he becomes a chauffeur to William McSwan, who was a wealthy businessman that owned amusement arcades. All I could think of when I was researching this and it said amusement arcades, I was like, Mrs. Pac-Man, Centipede, which probably weren't even in his arcades, but those were the days, man, weren't they?
Yeah. They're coming back. More and more places, they have full arcades.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So John begins to help maintain the McSwan's machines. He then begins to pretend to be a solicitor, or what we would call an attorney, named William Cato Anderson. He had a whole nother persona.
Yeah.
So he claims to have offices in Chancery Lane, Guildford, Surrey, and Hastings, Sussex. He sold fake stocks that were supposed to be from his deceased clients' estates, selling them at below market rates. He was discovered because, there weren't computers to spell check back then, and his letterhead misspelled Guildford. He forgot the D. Yeah, which Guildford is actually Guildford. So he forgot the D. He's arrested and charged, and he's sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud. So he's released just as World War II begins. But of course, no lessons learned, and he continues his fraudulent ways, and he continues to get caught. John gets caught many, 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 many times. And then he begins to regret like leaving his victims alive because he keeps getting caught.
Yeah.
So he becomes intrigued by French murderer Georges Alexander Surette. I like looked it up and how to say it with a French accent, but it's not gonna happen.
That sounded great. I don't know. Sounded good to me.
So George Alexander, he actually used sulphuric acid to get rid of his victims' bodies. Yeah. So taking lessons from George, John begins to experiment with acid using field mice as his test subjects. And he discovers, they dissolve into liquid sludge pretty quickly. It took 30 minutes for a field mouse. That's
a long time.
30 minutes?
You know, I mean, I guess it depends on
turn a body into sludge. You think 30 minutes is a long time? What are you using?
Nothing currently. I stay well away from field mice.
I'm like, I feel like that's pretty fast to turn an entire body of something into just sludge.
I have absolutely no frame of reference. So I was just like, man, 30 minutes? Like, what's he going to do? Is he going to bring a book? Like, he's just going to sit there? Like, it's like making something in the oven. You like turn it on, you go away, you come back.
Got the egg timer. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the acid bath murderer was created, born, cultivated. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, in 1943, John was released from prison and he began working as an accountant at an engineering firm. One night, by chance, John bumps into his old boss, William McSwan, at a pub in Kensington. William introduces John to his parents, Donald and Amy McSwan. So William is now working for his parents. He collects rent on their properties in London. John saw William's like lavish lifestyle and he's like, I want this, but I'm not going to work for it. That's silly. That's too much like, right. Whatever. So he's like, I'm just going to take it. So on September 6th of 1944, William disappears. But of course, it's like, we know behind the scenes because we're watching the TV show what really happens, but everybody in the TV show is like, where is William?
Where did William go? Did he go on vacation?
So John Haigh lures William into a basement on Gloucester Road, and then he hits him over the head with a lead pipe, and he puts his body in a 40-gallon drum with a concentrated solution of sulphuric acid. 2 days later, John checks on William's body, the drum containing what had his body, and discovered it was pretty much dissolved. So John pours the contents of the drum down a manhole.
Wow. Turns to sludge.
Yeah, yep. So next, John's like, all right, now I've got William out of the way. What about his parents? So he convinces Donald and Amy that William had gone into hiding in Scotland to avoid being called up for World War II draft. So then John basically takes over William's life. He moves into the McSwan household and he starts collecting rent like William did. Well, the war is now coming to an end and the McSwans are like, okay, well, where is he? Why hasn't he returned? They're not going to call him up now because the war is ending. Which means, okay, now he's got to handle this. So on July 2nd of 1945, he lures the McSwans to the Gloucester Road, to his place on Gloucester Road, telling them that William was waiting for them to surprise them with a visit. Like he'd come back from Scotland and he was waiting just to surprise them. So of course, they're super excited to see their son. And once inside, just as he had with William, John kills Donald and Amy by hitting them in the head. He then disposes of them in the same manner that he had as their son. He puts them in the drum containing the sulphuric acid. John then begins stealing their pension checks, and he sold their property for around 8 pounds, which would be $10,000 back then. Now it would be like $154,000.
Yeah.
So then John packs up and moves to Onslow Court. the Onslow Court Hotel in Kensington. John was a big time gambler. And by 1947, he was finding himself pretty short on funds because, gamblers tend to do that.
That tends to happen. The house tends to win.
Right. John sought his next victims because, he's already broke. He's already a gambler. He's already a murderer. Why not kill some more people?
It worked last time.
Dr. Archibald Henderson and Rose, his wife, were his next unfortunate targets. John pretends to be interested in purchasing a house that the Hendersons were selling. They learned of John's piano prowess, and Rose invites him to play at their housewarming party. While at the party, at the Hendersons' flat, John steals Archibald's revolver. Then he rented a workshop on Leopold Road in Crawley, Sussex. So he then moves the acid drums over from his Gloucester Road location to the new location on Leopold Road in Crawley. On February 12th of 1948, he and Archibald go to his new workshop under the guise of showing Archibald an invention. I got something to show you, man. You're going to really love this. It's really cool.
The best thing since sliced bread.
So once inside the shop, John shoots Archibald with a revolver that, yes, he had stolen from Archibald. He shoots the man with his own revolver. Then, telling Rose that Archibald had fallen ill at the workshop, he lures her there and he shoots her as well. He then disposes of their bodies in the acid drums that he had just moved over from the old location to the new location. And he forges a letter with their signatures, allowing him to sell their possessions, again, for £8,000 or now $154,000. He kept their car and their dog. I mean, the man needs a ride and a companion, I guess, right?
I guess, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like that's like even creepier. Like, you stole their dog, man. You killed them and stole their dog.
Yeah,
like, I don't want you to hurt the dog.
I can't kill the dog, and I guess just you can hang out, dog.
I mean, I get that. I don't want him to hurt the dog. Give the dog up. Like, you stole their dog. Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, John was.
People would ask questions, be like, "Hey, isn't that such and such dog?"
Yeah, it would seem so. Man, that dog looks familiar.
Yeah.
So John wasn't quite done with his spree. Not just yet. Next was a fellow resident at the Onslow Court Hotel, Olive Durand Deacon. She was 69 years old, and she was the widow of John Durand Deacon. John, posing as an engineer, and Olive was a self-proclaimed inventor. She tells John all about her idea for fake fingernails.
Oh,
which is
not
like
a bad idea. Yeah, she was ahead of her time.
She was onto something. Yeah, she really was. So on February 18th of 1949, John feigns interest in her invention and invites her to his Leopold Road workshop. Oh yeah, we'll work together. This will be great. When she's inside, when Olive goes inside, he shoots her with a .38 Webley, another weapon stolen from Archibald Henderson. He then took off all her valuables, including a Persian lamb coat, and he puts her in an acid bath drum. 2 days later, on February 20th, Olive's friend Constance Lane reports her missing. Since the last known location for Olive was the Leopold Road workshop, that's where police start to look because, her friend has tipped the police off she's missing. It didn't take detectives long at all to discover John's record of fraud and his theft because they searched the workshop. Authorities found John's attaché case. I feel like attaché is like classier than briefcase. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it's the same thing, but it just sounds classier.
It sounds better.
So inside the attaché case was a dry cleaner's receipt for a Persian lamb coat. It was Olive's coat, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There were also papers inside that made reference to both the McSwans and the Hendersons. So here's where John's trouble really catches up to him. The Leopold Road workshop did not have a drain like his previous shop. So he ended up
planning.
Yeah. Like he didn't think about that when he was doing the like walkthrough. Wait, I need a drain.
Yeah, I need a drain. What am I gonna do with this? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, but the location's so good.
the view outside the workshop for the acid drums. It didn't have a drain like the previous shop, so he dumped Olive's remains on a rubble pile behind the workshop. I'm not a murderer, but I'm like, that was kind of dumb, man.
Yeah, it's like you didn't like roll it down the street. You didn't, you just put it directly
you put it right behind your workshop where you killed her.
Yeah.
That was kind
of
no
one will look in the back.
Yeah. Prior, what is it? Lack of prior poor planning. The phrase, poor planning. I don't know. Whatever. There's a phrase.
If you plan poor, you're going to get poorly planned.
On March 1st of 1949 at 4:15 p.m., Detective Inspector Albert Webb. I love the names there too, like D.I. Webb, Detective Inspector Webb, instead of like Sergeant or Detective. Anyway, sorry, getting sidetracked.
I wonder if it's like the reverse is true. If they're like, "Ooh, that's such a cool way to say Detective Inspector," or they're just like, "Eh."
I don't know, but I just feel like Detective Inspector as opposed to like officer.
Yeah, it sounds way cooler. Yeah.
Yeah. So Detective or DI Albert Webb was waiting for John at Leopold Road, and John was taken to the station for questioning. During his questioning, John asks DI Webb, "Tell me, frankly, what are the chances of anybody being released from Broadmoor?" So Broadmoor, we've talked about it before, but in case you don't know, Broadmoor is a high security psychiatric hospital. So it sounds like he's doing a little planning here.
Yeah, he's like, if I ended up there, how would I get out? Just theoretically.
Like, what are my chances? I took that as either his chances of escape or his chances of just being released.
Yeah.
So D.I. Webb informs John that he could not discuss such a thing. John's reply was, "Well, if I told you the truth, you would not believe me. It sounds too fantastic to believe." So then John confesses to the murder of Olive Durand, Deacon. But he says, "How can you prove murder if there's no body? I've destroyed her with acid. You'll find the sledge remains at Leopold Road. Every trace is gone." He then went on to confess to the murders of the McSwans, the Hendersons, and 3 other people: a young man named Max, a girl from Eastbourne, and a woman from Hammersmith, although the last 3 could not be confirmed.
Because there was no body.
Right. So John Haig's trial was held at Luz Assize, and during his trial, he pleads insanity, claiming that he had drunk the blood of his victims and it made him mad, hence the vampire thing.
Wow. I had forgotten about the vampire thing. It's full circle now.
Mm-hmm. Of course, no evidence was found to substantiate that he actually drank his victim's blood, so it might just be a claim. John also said that he had dreams as a young boy that were dominated by blood thoughts. He said he was in a car accident in March of 1944 and that the dream came back to him. He said, quote, "I saw before me a forest of crucifixes, which gradually turned into trees. At first, there appeared to be a dew or rain dripping from the branches. But as I approached, I realized it was blood. The whole forest began to writhe and the trees, dark and erect, to ooze blood. A man went from each tree catching the blood. When the cup was full, he approached me. 'Drink,' he said, but I was unable to move." The prosecution, which was led by Attorney General Sir Hartley Shawcross, urged the jury to reject John's claims of insanity, saying that he had actually acted with malice and forethought. Remember, he was asking D.I. Webb about getting out of Broadmoor.
Mm-hmm.
Defense attorney Sir David Fife used a bunch of counter witnesses to vouch for John's mental health, including a man named Henry Yellowleaves, who's a British physician. Say that 5 times fast. He was a British physician, and he was chief medical officer of the UK from 1973 to 1984. That's well after this case, but kind of shows you his prominence.
Mm-hmm.
Henry claimed that John had a paranoid constitution, saying that the absolute callous, cheerful, bland, and almost friendly indifference of the accused to the crimes, which he freely admits to having committed, is unique in my experience. That's kind of like a weird description of someone, like cheerful, callous, bland. Like it doesn't. I don't know.
There's a lot going on there. That's a lot of confusing, contradictory things.
Yeah. So John believed that his victims, if his victims' bodies couldn't be found, then a murder conviction would be impossible. But he was mistaken, of course. It took just 17 minutes for the jury to find him guilty. Justice Travis Humphrey sentenced John to death, and on August 10th of 1949, John drank a glass of brandy before being put to death by hanging. He was hanged by renowned executioner Albert Pierpont. Albert is said to have killed between 400 to 550 criminals, including high-profile killers, the Blackout Ripper, the Rillington Place Strangler, who's John Christie. We talked about him in episode 62, and the Blackpool Poisoner. Before his execution, John wrote a letter to his girlfriend. It always amazes me that these serial killers have girlfriends.
Yeah, no, it says a lot.
He said in his letter,
I don't know what it says, but it's not good.
It's not good. He says in his letter, it is difficult to say farewell under these circumstances, but you will understand that you will always be in my thoughts. You know, I have been proud of our association. It has always been an honorable one. I shall remember your great kindness and devotion. Now I must leave you. If that's not the most, I don't know.
Well, I mean, clearly just the man was a poet. It was such romance. And,
it was so romantic.
Such passion.
I have been proud of our association.
Like when you compare how he talked about his dream with the trees and the blood, that was poetic. This was not poetic. So if I'm the girlfriend, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, you can write that about trees with blood, but this is what I get. Oh.
Yeah. It's been an honorable one. So John's case was featured on the 1951 radio series, The Black Museum, in an episode called The Jar of Acid. An unproduced Hitchcock project called The Kaleidoscope was inspired by John Haigh and serial killer Neville Heath. Neville killed two young women in 1946 and was put to death in October of 1949 in London. Man, I've said this before. The UK justice system does not play around.
Yeah, but back in the day, it was efficient.
Man. In 2002, ITV drama, there was an ITV drama, A is for Acid, which was based on John's story. Actor Martin Clunes played John. You might actually recognize Martin, Adam, from Doctor Who, the 80s version, Shakespeare in Love, Manhunt, or Doc Martin.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so get this. John Hay's wax work was exhibited at Madame Tussauds in London. He agreed to actually model for the mask, and he even donated his clothing to the exhibit under the condition that the exhibit be kept in pristine condition, including creased trousers, shirt cuffs, and neatly parted hair. The exhibit was actually shut down in 2016. There's a stage play called Under a Red Moon by Michael Slade. It has a fictional account of John Hay's examination by a psychiatrist before his trial. Criminal Minds had an episode called Mastermind, which was inspired by John. It's season 4, episode 8, and Jason Alexander plays the villain. His name is Professor Rothschild. American thrash death metal band Macabre has a song about John Haigh off of their murder metal album called Acid Bath Vampire. And a Japanese metal band called Church of Misery has a song about John Haigh called Make Them Die Slowly, John George Haigh. It's on their And Then There Were None album. And there you go.
I'm always impressed at how many times Criminal Minds pops up in the postscripts we have.
Whoever does their Criminal Minds, like whoever does the research, man, they are like serious true crime people, because They really do their research. But there you go. That's the story of John George Haigh.
The acid bath murderer.
The vampire killer. Or I should just say, he was the vampire. He thought.
Like, honestly, if for somebody who like claimed to be a vampire, there was not nearly enough instances of like, he just kind of tossed that in at the end. It felt like, it was like, as a kid, I wanted to be a vampire. And then I wanted to see these people melt in the acid. But I did it because I was a vampire. I'm like,
because their blood made me mad. So then I put them in acid.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like you're just kind of shoehorning the vampire thing in here to make yourself sound crazy. Because in the pictures, he doesn't dress like a vampire.
No.
Yeah. None of his made up names are obviously vampire names, like Dr. Acula or something.
He never tells people he's from Transylvania. Yeah,
right. I mean, I expected a little bit more from someone who, as a child, was obsessed with vampires.
He never tells people that he's afraid of garlic or holy water.
Right. Yeah. Like, just like, you got to sprinkle this stuff in for flavor, my man. You got to you got to add this. And like, then later we're all like, oh, he did hate garlic.
He slept in the coffin and only came out at night. It makes so much sense now.
So much more sense. He always talked about how the sun was bad for him. Gosh, maybe.
Oh man, but there you go. That is the story of John George Haigh, and that is the B-side.
So for the A-side this week, I had 2 or 3 things that I was thinking about doing, and I started to think back about one of my favorite things about movie nights when I was a kid. When we didn't go to the theater, we'd go to Mr. Movies or Hollywood Video or Blockbuster and rent a VHS or a DVD. But the biggest challenge, and I cannot tell you how many hours of my life I spent walking the aisles of Mr. Movies or Hollywood Video or Blockbuster, either by myself or with my family or with my friends in high school or college, trying to find a movie to rent that night. We would spend way too long, and you'd walk around, you'd read the back of all the movies, and you'd pick up the cases, you'd check out the art, you'd try to find something you hadn't seen before which sounded interesting. And it's honestly how I found some of my most favorite movies. But there was also a lot of times where we gave something a shot that was just super awful because we'd never heard of it and we didn't know how bad it was. And I kind of missed that, accidentally falling into stuff because it pops up on the shelf as you're walking by and something catches your eye, because now everything is curated by the various streams. Like, if you watch this, then you'll like this. If you've seen this movie with this actor, then here are 5 other movies by that actor that you should watch. So it's all connected in some way. But last night I was flipping on Amazon Prime, and I have been watching a lot of movies. I watched Terminator the other night, and I'm not sure what I had watched that got this suggestion for me, but a movie popped up that I had never heard of, didn't have any recollection of it being out in theaters, which is kind of rare because I feel like I have at least heard of a lot of stuff. So to find something that was completely new to me was super exciting. And I clicked on it and I said, why was this, Amazon Prime will then tell me why it was recommended. And they're like, because you watched Romancing the Stone, you might like this. And I was like, okay, cool. I like Romancing the Stone. Let's watch this movie. And it turns out that entire idea of because you liked Romancing the Stone is basically how this movie got made. In 1988, Cyndi Lauper, who was a famous pop singer who Girls Just Want to Have Fun was probably her biggest hit, along with True Colors, which turns out was a Phil Collins song first. I didn't know. Was looking to become a crossover hit, much like Madonna was at the time. They were pop stars that were trying to get into acting, and she wanted to get into movies, but she was looking for the perfect role. And the studio had decided that this script which they described as Romancing the Stone meets Ghostbusters with Temple of Doom involved, was the perfect Cyndi Lauper vehicle. And right? Because why not? Cyndi Lauper then was assigned, the studio got her signed up, and they went around trying to find a leading man to pair her with. And when it's the mid 80s and you've already mentioned Ghostbusters, they were like, hey, let's try to get Dan Aykroyd in. And Dan Aykroyd was like, all right, I might be interested. He checks out the script. He doesn't love the script, but he's going to, pursue it a little bit further, actually meets with Cyndi Lauper, and then after meeting with her, decides he doesn't want to do the movie at all.
Dang.
Drops the movie, so they have to go out and find someone else. And it's the mid 80s, and you've got all sorts of leading men. But if you were looking for somebody who kind of matched Cyndi Lauper on the kookiness scale at that time, you would stumble upon, as the studio did, Jeff Goldblum. So as I'm scanning the screen last night, we've got Cyndi Lauper, Jeff Goldblum, and Peter Falk, Columbo himself, and the dad who reads The Princess Bride to Fred Savage in The Princess Bride, is the third star, and it's called Vibes. A story of two psychics who have to go and find a secret city of gold in the Andes in Ecuador, along with Peter Falk and all the hijinks that ensue. It's literally if you took Romancing the Stone, jammed in some Ghostbusters, and then oddly stole the plot from, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, which didn't come out for another 25 years, and jammed that in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It is arguably the worst movie I have ever seen.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And that is saying something. The plot starts out, literally the first scene is completely ripped off of the first scene of Ghostbusters. In Ghostbusters, they've got, Venkman is doing the tests on the different subject about, whether they're psychic and can they see the cards. That is the first scene. They ripped it straight out of Ghostbusters. That's where Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper's characters meet, because they're all part of this psychic testing group.
Look, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
The entire movie is one ripped off scene after another, even to the point where they rip off a movie that hadn't even been made yet with the Crystal Skull when they get to the psychic pyramid at the end. Cyndi Lauper has not figured out how to act yet, so she just plays Cyndi Lauper, but Cyndi Lauper as a psychic. Jeff Goldblum is trying his best, running around trying to be interesting, given absolutely nothing to do, and given no backstory, and the script that makes almost no sense because they just bounce from here to there. Peter Falk shows up as sort of the Danny DeVito wisecracking character who gets them together to go search for the thing, except he lies the entire time, and his lies get figured out by the two psychics, because Cyndi Lauper she's a medium, so she has Louise, her spirit guide, and Jeff Goldblum can touch anything and know everything about it, so he can touch a table and figured out who's been on that table before, or he famously finds out that his love interest has been sleeping with other men because he picks up her underwear and knows that someone else has picked it up. It's very weird moments throughout the entire film that just kind of bounce from place to place without any rhyme or reason. No one seems to have a vested interest in it working. They're trying their best, but the script just kind of bounces around until we get to the very end. And spoiler alert, this movie came out in 1988, and I had never heard of it, and I hope no one else has ever heard of it, but I'm going to spoil it so you never have to watch it. And when it pops up on Amazon Prime saying, because you like Romancing the Stone, or because you watch Ghostbusters, or because you've seen everything that Jeff Goldblum's ever been in, you should watch this, don't. At the very end of the movie, very much like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's a giant pyramid that the aliens have put there to encompass all the psychic energy, and Cyndi Lauper has to be the one to stop the bad guys from stealing the psychic energy. The entire movie, for about 7/8 of it, we're figuring we're trying to find a lost city of gold, but then at the very end, they're like, no, it's a psychic pyramid, and there's no gold at all. And the guy who started this whole thing back in the beginning, the doctor who was testing everybody, is trying to steal the psychic energy for something. We don't know what he's going to do with it, but he's going to steal it, and that's bad. Peter Falk gets killed, which is awful. Everyone gets shot and then suddenly like isn't shot. Like they get shot and you're like, oh, that's bad. And then like 5 minutes later, they're running like they haven't been shot. Doesn't make any. It literally feels like somebody said, okay, let's mash these 3 movies together. We're going to write this script in one night while we are high on the cocaine that we saw people taking on Euphoria. And we'll just make it and it'll be great. And Cyndi Lauper's in it, and so it'll make money, and we'll just Peter Falk's there for a check, and Jeff Goldblum is honestly, I love Jeff Goldblum, and I think there's been this weird like arc of Jeff Goldblum's career where like The Fly happens, everyone's like, oh, he's a really interesting actor. Then he has a bunch of horrible movies. Everyone's like, oh, he's just weird and goofy. And then like Jurassic Park happens, and whoa, he's like a leading man, and he's in Independence Day. And then it just kind of goes up and down. And then he's a side character in Guardians of the Galaxy, and now he's got this TV show on Disney Plus where he's basically just playing himself. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's very meta.
It's very meta. He's had a very interesting career, and I have enjoyed very much so much of what he's done, especially because when I was becoming a huge movie fan, Jurassic Park and Independence Day were 2 of the biggest movies, and I thought Jeff Goldblum was a huge star, only to find out later that he was just kind of a guy in movies that was the sidekick. But he's trying his best. If you really love Jeff Goldblum, you could maybe watch this movie, or if you like a lot of really bad jokes about psychics that don't seem to land anywhere, or if you just want to see Peter Falk kind of getting a paycheck, you can. The best way to describe this film, and something that I wish I could do, and hopefully within a few years this will happen to me, can be described by Roger Ebert in his review from back in 1988 when he gave it 1 out of 4 stars.
Oof.
He said, movies like Vibes appear and disappear like fireflies in the dog days of summer. Nobody seems to have made them, nobody sees them, and nobody remembers them. 5 years from now, Goldblum will be asking himself what the title of that movie was that he made in the Andes. For me, it's not nearly going to take that long.
Wow.
So hopefully I, like Roger Ebert and evidently Jeff Goldblum, can forget that I ever stumbled upon this movie at 2 a.m. And I've made a lot of poor decisions in the middle of the night. But this definitely is one of the worst movie decisions I have ever experienced. So if you see Vibes pop up on Amazon Prime, do not click go. Do not watch it. Give yourself $200 and go find anything else to do. Vibes is very, very bad.
All righty then. Talking about Jeff Goldblum, it was really funny. I saw a video of him the other day of him watching people do Jeff Goldblum impressions. So it's Jeff Goldblum watching Jeff Goldblum, and it was really pretty funny.
I find him very, very hilarious. I wish that his character in Guardians of the Galaxy 2? Yeah, 2, where he plays like the warlord. No, Thor Ragnarok. I'm sorry. Totally bad. Thor Ragnarok, where he plays the warlord on the trash planet. Yeah, that was a great character. Yeah, like that was so good. And I was like, I would like more of that. He's just a delight to see in movies. You're going to get something unexpected. He's also got that whole apartments.com thing where he pretends to be like Brad Bellflower or something. Yeah. Like this like Jeff Bezos, what's his name? The guy who did Apple,
Steve
Jobs, like sort of like knockoff character. And he's been doing it for years. And I'm like, he's really committed to the bit. It just, the character sticks around. So I really like Jeff Goldblum. That's why I was like, maybe there's something here, but boy, is there not anything there. If you're looking for goofy Jeff Goldblum movies from the mid 80s, go watch Earth Girls are easy because that's
Ooh,
a much
good
better
one.
film.
Yeah.
Such a much better film. That was actually the movie that was recommended to me right after I watched and finished Vibes. And I did watch it as a palate cleanser because Vibes was so bad.
Oof. That's saying a lot because
I've watched a lot of bad movies.
But I feel like you typically are like, it's not terrible, like I might not watch it again. But
I can usually find something to enjoy in almost every movie.
Some redeeming quality, yes.
I felt so bad for everyone in it except Cyndi Lauper because she seemed like she was having a good time. Everybody else seemed that they were like, you were watching somebody try to cook without ingredients. It was like a cooking show where they were like, hey, you need to make a cake. And we gave you like a loaf of bread and a spatula and an oven. So see you in an hour. And they're like, okay, I guess we're just going to warm up this bread and call it a cake. Yay. Yeah, it was rough.
Does anybody have any butter for the frosting?
Yeah, do we have anything? Oh, yeah, let's stack the bread and make it look different. And then maybe people won't realize it's just sliced bread. And they're doing the best of what they had, and they were not given much of a script to work with.
All right, so there you go. Is that the A side?
That is the A side. I got my venting out. I feel a lot better.
All right. So before we go, we have been following the case of Lauren Smith Fields. This is something that this case is like living in my head, and I just can't stop thinking about it. Of course, it made national media finally. It was on, I believe it was Good Morning America on like Sunday, and then the Today Show, maybe Monday, CBS, the CBS morning show. What is that one? I can't remember the name of that one with Gail. So all of them have been talking about it. We talked last week that the guy's name was revealed, Matthew LaFountain. And now, because it was funny, because it was like my mom messaged me on Sunday. It was my birthday. And the first message was about Lauren Smith Fields and how it was on Good Morning America. And then later she was like, oh yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
But so it hit the media, the national media on Sunday. And then Monday, I just think it's real convenient timing. Monday, it hit again. And then Monday, the medical examiner's office ruled her death a suicide. But it was a suicide or not a suicide, excuse me, an accident. I am so sorry. Not suicide, an accident. Yeah. They ruled it an accident. But like with all these different drugs in her system. And like one report was she was found in a blood-soaked sheets. And then another story is saying that he found her on the floor, but he had spent the night. So how did he find her on the floor? But he was never questioned. This makes no sense. This is not an accident. This does not sound
like a really
like
long and a really long time for that determination to come out.
Yeah.
Like, why did it take so long if, what was like the lab backed up?
I don't know this. I'm going to keep talking about it because I don't believe that it's an accident. And her family is suing the police department, for the way they handled the case and, the true lack of really investigating. And it looks like there might be some big attorneys getting involved, like Attorney Crump might be getting involved. And he's one that represented George Floyd family. Okay. So I believe I may be misspeaking, and I apologize if I am, but I think that he has jumped on to help the family. So I hope we get some true justice for Lauren very soon. I honestly, I'm not going to stop talking about it because I truly, until the family comes out and says, yes, we had our own, they hired their own medical examiner to do an autopsy. So unless the family comes out and says, okay, we had an independent autopsy, and yes, we truly believe that it's an accident, I'm not going to stop talking about it because this sweet girl needs justice.
And if somebody, and as a bartender and a server who works in a restaurant, if I overserve someone, I can be liable for their accidental death, at least in the state of Minnesota. And so even if this is an accident, how is there not some investigation into the culpability of, was how did she get this drunk, or how did she have this many things going on in her system? I mean, there has to be an investigation on what more was happening here. Don't just like, you wouldn't just be like, oh, well, it's an accident. Some, people don't get that drunk by themselves.
Right.
Usually. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the human body has a way of just, passing out when it's had too much. It feels like there needs to be a little bit of investigation here, because clearly something nefarious feels like it was going on.
Absolutely.
Even if it was manslaughter, you still investigate it and say this was negligence, or he should have done something to get her help.
I'm glad that the national media has finally picked it up and they're still talking about it, even though the medical examiner came out and said that it's an accident. I love that that they are still covering it, because they're saying mysterious death. So they are not, fortunately, they have come across as like, hey, this does seem a bit shady. Because I think it was the Sun newspaper, the article that they put out was, here's the thing in media, a lot of times if the victim, if the perpetrator is a white male, and we see this all the time, the perpetrator is a white male, they find a really good picture where he looks like some down home, really great guy. And then the true victim, they usually find some kind of quote unquote scandalous photo. So they used a photo of her in a bathing suit while he's in like hiking equipment. Like his was like on a hike. It's like, why would you use a bathing suit picture for her? Why wouldn't you just use a regular picture for her? And then it was like engineer Matthew and Bumble date. And it's like, come on.
Yeah. They know how to get people's attention with the headlines and the photos. You never see the mugshots of the or you only see mugshots of certain people. It's
right. Yeah. So anyway, we will keep following that, because like I said, until the family comes out and says we accept this, I'm not going to stop talking about it. I'm just not, because there's something more at play here.
And I'm seeing it more and more places. Just randomly, I'll be going through Facebook stories or Instagram stories, and it'll pop up in somebody's feed. It's starting to get more and more attention. So just got to keep doing it.
Yep. Just got to keep talking about it. Keep her name out there. But that is another episode. That's 79 of A Side B Side podcast. There's several ways you can support the podcast. Also, pictures and sources going to be on the website. A Side B. Oh, sorry. I'm stealing your thunder, Adam.
No, that's okay. It's A-Side, B-Side, podcast.square.site. And on that website, if you don't believe me that Vibes is horrible and you shouldn't watch it, we have a link to the trailer. So you can see the trailer. I couldn't watch the trailer. Had I watched the trailer, I probably still would have watched the movie, because I'm a sucker. But you can watch the trailer and be like, oh, yeah, that's not going to be good. I was like, wow.
Yeah. Man. So the trailer will be there, along with also pictures from both cases. Well, not case, you didn't have a case, you had a movie, but pictures, as well as merch. You can also get to the podcast itself. We'll have a link so that you can listen to the podcast on our website. You can also go to YouTube. It's on all the streamers. You can support the podcast by going to buymeacoffee.com/A-Side-B-Side-pod. And I think we've covered all our bases, Adam.
Yeah. Like, share. If you are somebody listening in England, do you find our police names charming, or is it just the other way around?
Pretty sure it's the other way around. I think we find their names charming, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah. If you've got stories or movies that, like, horrible movies you've seen that you think I should watch at 3 a.m, let me know. I'll probably watch them, because I watch everything evidently, except if it's scary. I don't watch scary stuff because I don't want to have dreams like John Haigh, because that was pretty creepy.
Yeah, you don't watch them any time of day, let alone 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, I don't like noon. The sun's out. I'll be like, nope, too scary. Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, all right. There we go. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.